First thing I want to do is thank Lisa Rostino for being an incredible mentor for me, as I am the new Phoenix Award Committee Chair, and she did a terrific job staying on an extra year to co-chair to help me while I was out of the country. In a moment, I'll introduce the winner of this year's Phoenix Award, but first, I'm going to announce next year's winners. The Phoenix Award will go to James Hennigan's 1997 Wish Me Luck, the compelling story of a tragic historical event too often ignored. The sinking by the Germans of the SS city of Benares, a ship carrying children whose Liverpool families had sent them away from the dangers of World War II to safety in Canada. Hennigan will happily join us in Tampa to accept his award. We have two honor books next year, Habibi, Naomi Shihab Nye's semi-autobiographical account of a Palestinian-American family's move from St. Louis to Jerusalem, and Seed Folks, Paul Fleischman's spare, multi-voice story of a community garden in Cleveland. We hope we'll have as good papers next year as we did today about Frindle. So all of you think about those books, please. And now, I hope you all have your Frindles. I know you do. Please use them wisely to write well. Andrew Clements has been writing wisely and well, and often with humor, since 1985. His over 70 books for children, from picture books to teen novels, from Big Al to Lunch Money to Things Not Seen, have received many awards, including the Edgar Allan Poe and Christopher Awards, plus state children's book awards and more. And he should also get an award for answering every letter any child writes to him, or any adult for that matter. He told me about that today. Tonight, we're celebrating his much-loved book, Frindle, which may soon become a film co-starring Susan Sarandon. Wow. Anyone who's read Frindle will not be surprised that Andrew Clements was a teacher for 7 years. Frindle's tone is lighter than many Phoenix Award winners. Protagonist Nick Allen aims to get teachers off topic. But when his 5th grade teacher assigns a report on where words in dictionaries come from, Nick takes the subject seriously and creates his own new word, Frindle, to describe a pen. Soon all the kids are saying Frindle, and then the media get involved and the word takes on a life of its own. One librarian has said, Mrs. Granger, a serious, sometimes strict teacher who's passionate about the English language, recognizes Nick's creativity and initiative and secretly aids him in his experiment. When the media circus surrounding the word's growing popularity undermines Nick's self-confidence, she intervenes. The extent to which Nick and Mrs. Granger understand each other is revealed only at the end of the book. It's good for students to see that such a relationship is possible. Clements celebrates the pleasure and power of words and the way a good teacher can empower a student to fulfill his or her potential. The Kirkus Review claimed years ago, if there's any justice in the world, Clements may have something of a classic on his hands. The Phoenix Committee agrees, admiring his omniscient narrator, reminiscent of classics such as Mr. Popper's Penguins and Charlotte's Web, yet with forward thinking into the dictionary of the future. In fact, Frindle is in the Urban Dictionary, the online slang dictionary, and allwords.com. Can the OED be far behind? How can a bunch of college professors and librarians who live and breathe words resist giving this book the Phoenix? Clearly, we could not resist. Please join me in congratulating the winner of the 2016 Phoenix Award, Andrew Clements.
very pretty. To be studied later. Well, I'm afraid I'm going to touch something here that will mess up the picture, but I'll be careful. I'm kind of low-tech here after screens full of things all day. I was asked, are you going to bring something that we can plug into the machine? I said, no, I'm going pretty much analog tonight. Not quite, though, because I've got a few remarks on an iPad, so that's semi-digital. First of all, thank you very, very, very much. I was also surprised, as Molly stated, because I was not feeling lost or neglected about this book. It, as was mentioned by Lois, it did win some awards, a lot of awards really from the most important audience, from the kids, the Children's Choice Awards. And it has continued to do well through the years. Still, what an amazing award from such knowledgeable, thoughtful, heartful people. And I sincerely thank you for that. A lot has happened over the past 20 years, so much that it would be impossible to summarize. And as a rule, I avoid looking back. But this award demands at least a glance back over the shoulder. And it is such a happy thing to do. One of the most remarkable things about any book is its permanence. Books last. They endure. A book is a very particular set of words, words carefully chosen, and destined to stay wonderfully the same, literally forever. But permanence is not the same as life. For a book to truly live, it must keep being read. I'm so grateful to see how Frindle has continued to live on as a current event in the lives of so many children and in so many classrooms here in the U.S. and around the world. Who knew? Who knew the book would have such a future? Not my publisher. The first printing of Frindle was exactly 2,500 copies. So if you ever see a first edition, it's a rare thing. So that wasn't exactly a huge vote of confidence. Not the first review. In Publishers Weekly, they called it a, quote, mild classroom fantasy. That was the first review. Kirkus came later. Did I know that Frindle would go on to have the life it has had? In a word, no. My wife and I certainly felt it was a good story that was true to the life of teachers and true to the spirit of childhood itself. And we were certainly glad to get the very modest advance, a much smaller check than Mom had. One of the things I got with that money was a good Eddie Bauer down parka, which I still wear every winter. And I'm sure we also bought Nikes and hamburger, and we have 4 sons. And we paid a few months' mortgage and car payments and so on. Now my mom, no longer with us, she knew. She was totally certain that this was the finest piece of prose ever to have flowed from the thought to page. But we all know about moms, right? But really, it was the teachers who first saw the life in this book. They saw Frindle for what it has come to be. Specifically, there were some former teachers then working at scholastic book clubs and fairs. When they got an advance copy, less than a month after the initial publication, Scholastic placed an order for 250,000 copies. And suddenly, very suddenly, my life as an author was off and running. Frindle was followed by an offer to write 2 more books about kids and teachers in schools. I actually wrote a novel that Lois mentioned, Things Not Seen, which is a young adult novel, immediately after I wrote Frindle. Because Frindle was when I discovered that I actually could write a sustained narrative. Up until that moment, I had been Andrew Clements, the picture book author. My first 10 books were picture books. And when I sent that manuscript for Things Not Seen, which on page 1 has a pretty normal 15-year-old guy waking up on the south side of Chicago in a cold Victorian house, getting ready for school at the University of Chicago Lab School, he wakes up and discovers that he is invisible. Now that's the only fantastic thing in the story. Everything else is just completely literal. But on page 1, so it's not much of a spoiler, on page 1 he wakes up and he cannot see his body. It's there, he punches the shower curtain, it moves, but he cannot see himself. Which is a pretty good analogy for the teenage years. It's difficult to find oneself and see oneself. Invisibility is not a new idea, of course, it's as old as God. But I sent this to the people that published Frindle, and they said, it's a little strange around the edges, it's 280 pages long, you've got gangsters in this thing, it's all over. How about another story about kids and teachers in school? And they gave me a contract which enabled me to quit some of my other jobs and write 2 more books. Frindle did win some very nice awards, in particular Children's Choice Awards in more than 35 states, and it also won the Christopher Award. So I certainly did not feel that the book or I was neglected in any way. The biggest gift this book gave to me was time. Time to sit still and think and write. And now for a little analog show and tell. Something changed on the screen, but not on that screen. I'm going to need some volunteers. Come over to this table. Hold this end. Kind of stand there by those curtains there. And we're going to kind of make an arc. Here's my first 10 years of life as an author, flashing before your eyes. This is a bookcordian. kind of a trademarked idea. A bookcordian of my book covers. And these are the first 10 books, and they're all picture books. The first several ones were facilitated by the fact that I was working for the company that published them. And when I got to about this point, this is about 10 years of work here, from 1985, the first picture book there. Big Al, who was mentioned, is number 3 there on my timeline of books. But when I got to this point, I came up with an idea, and I called it you can see it on my website, I think, Next New Word. Kid gets an idea, it's going to make it. It's basically the entire story of Frindle in 750 words. It's most of the major plot points, the major characters, it's all there. And I sent it to a publisher, and the publisher said, it was actually Dorothy Briley at Clarion Books. I sent it to Dorothy Briley, and she had published this one and a few more back along the way. And she said, not really very funny. I don't really like it. And we, now if you wrote it as a chapter book, I'd take another look at it. And I said, but Dorothy, I don't write chapter books. They're so long. There's so many words. I cannot do that. And I sent it to a different publisher, a man. 2 weeks later, I get a letter from him. Andrew, interesting idea. I've never read a story like this before, but it really needs to be a chapter book. 3 other editors said the same thing, and I'm thinking there's a big problem in New York City. It's an attack of the seriously stupids. They're just not getting it. But finally, I asked myself a very important question. You should all ask yourself, here we go, there's 3 phrases, okay? So repeat after me. Because I'm calling these people fools and dunderheads and morons, and I'm finally saying, hold a second. And I ask myself this question, repeat after me. Is it possible?
Is it possible?
Could it be?
Could it be?
That I am the idiot here? Very important question. And the answer, of course, was yes. It really did need more room. And I tell kids this, I say, it's like if you've got, a picture book is just a container. Every book is a container. A picture book is a small container. Now imagine if you took a water bottle, a little, 1 liter water bottle, and you try to put a German Shepherd inside that container. It's going to be an unhappy experience for both of you. It's not the right container. And that's all these wonderful 5 smart people were telling me. it needs a bigger container, Clements. Put it in a picture, put it in a chapter book container. And I finally made myself write the most difficult thing, the longest thing I'd ever written, longer than my master's, long stuff. And lo and behold, it was successful. So that was at year 10, kind of 1996. And as I said, that gave me time. And time is the great secret ingredient. So here we are, 2002, Things Not Seen finally did get published by a different publishing company. I worked with Patricia Lee Gouch. Have you ever met Patty Gouch? Editor for many, many years at, I think first Green Willow and then at Philomel. And on and on and on. Goes on like that. We need more volunteers over here. Whenever you pick up a book, what you're really picking up is a big chunk of somebody else's time and thought and love and care and sweat and pain and hopefully a lot of joy, especially if you're writing for kids. There ought to be some joy in there. And for me, this really has been a very, very joyous activity. I've gotten to meet so many wonderful people in this process of being an author. It was mentioned by Lois that I was a teacher for 7 years, taught 4th grade for 2 years, 8th grade English for 3 years, high school English for 2 years. And then my wife and I was being fired several times in there because of reduction in force. They call it reduction in force, but it's actually RIF, fired. It's an anagram for RIF. I know. Dog piece, you have to think about that. But when it finally broke open, when I finally got the idea that I really could write, and I actually had the time to do it, I got to meet so many wonderful people, and people have said, kids have said, Mr. Clements, if you weren't writing books, what would you be doing? I said, well, I think I'd probably still be teaching. And was it you today, Lois, who said, do you miss teaching? I said, well, I'm still a teacher. I'm going to be teaching tonight. You watch. I'm going to be teaching tonight. And I get to go visit classrooms. Simon & Schuster recently told me that there are more than 10 million of my books in print, which means if you do the math, you all know how books circulate. It's a big number. So I've gotten to have not that amazing face-to-face in the trenches every day with kids and or college students and or graduate students and or colleagues. But it is a kind of communication, a kind of teaching, and it's, I figured out that during the 7 years I was teaching, I taught basically face-to-face, day in, day out, about 700 kids, starting with 30 in my first 4th grade classroom, and then we got up to 8th grade, 3 sections a day, and so on into high school, about 700 kids. And that, I just can't be more grateful for the opportunity I've had, not only to reach those kids, but to help the teachers who are charged with teaching kids to read. And I feel like I've had this wonderful long partnership with so many amazing teachers at every level. From graduate school, I get letters from people who have said, I use this in my linguistics class. Right down to the stack I still have to answer at home of the letters that came in all in a bunch from my publisher, about 100 of them 2 days ago, from classrooms all around. I got one from Singapore. They're all over the place, and it's just an amazing thing. So I have people like you and all your colleagues and all the people that you have taught through the years to thank for so much of what has come to me. And who knew? Thank you for your help. You may just lay that down. The last thing I wanted to say here is you may all remember, I know you all remember, on December 14th of 2012 at Sandy Hook Elementary School, a deranged young man walked in and killed 20 6- and 7-year-old kids and 6 teachers and staff members. Within 2 weeks, a new school, that is an old school repurposed in a neighboring town, had been completely prepared by volunteer workers to receive all the kids. They kind of closed that school down. I think it's been raised by now. And the mission for the surrounding towns, all the parents, all the people, everyone in those towns, and from all around the country as well, was to give the surviving students and teachers as normal a remainder of the year as was humanly possible. So they were working very hard at this. I mean, it was an old junior high school, and I mean, they even raised the levels of the floors in the bathrooms so that it would be right size for the younger kids. One of the things that they always did was to have one school, one book event. And all the school community would read one book, one school, and they thought, well, let's try and do this again. They had a very tough time because they were trying to figure out, well, where can we find a book that's gentle, a book that does not include the names of any of the murdered children. Imagine that. A book that has a real positive feeling to it. Frindle was the book that they chose. And I learned about this when they were pretty much already done with this, and I got a note from my editor who had been contacted, and she said, would you be willing to go and visit the school? So on a beautiful June morning in 2013, less than 6 months after this had happened, my wife and I drove down from our home, which was then in Massachusetts, down to Connecticut. We went past the police booth in the parking lot. We were met by Yvonne Check, the librarian who had barricaded herself and 18 kids into a storage closet with a filing cabinet. And the school's motto was up on big poster boards in the windows. It said, "We choose love." And really there was such love and generosity at that school, a palpable caring that I've never felt in any other school I've worked at, visited, anytime. And really my wife and I agree that being there that day was really a holy experience. I was told during my presentation, because I've got a whole shtick about Frindle, about how it came to be. They said, now make sure that you don't use any sharp, sudden motions. Don't drop a book if you can help it, because that sets things off. Quite a day. Well, really knowing the place that book that you've honored played in the life of that school community that year is really one of the great other honors in my life. Being here, receiving this award, is another. I thank you all so much. Keep doing this great work. Thank you.